developed for the summit. Very cool. All right. Next up, we have Getting Started with Collection Finances in Koha. And joining us to speak about that is John Sterbenz from the University of Michigan, Kresge Library Services.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. I've never been accused of being too soft, so I'm guessing people in the back hear me correctly. Yes, I see some head nods. I almost called this, oh God, another presentation on acquisitions, but I thought that would be just a little bit too flippant. Some important points about this. This presentation was developed in 1711, but the primary points here should actually hold true all the way back to 1605 for those that might be running older versions. That's when standing order functionality was introduced. Newer versions have introduced some major bug fixes though, and it fixed a number of other outstanding problems. Note also that this is not a presentation about the entirety of the acquisitions module. Rather, this is just a presentation that focuses on how one can track collection finances within the system, and yes, this is actually very possible. You'll see a number of screenshots. These are a mixture of both production data as well as sample data that I developed in my development system. And it's very important to note that Kresge is a self-everything library. Self-hosted, self-installed, self-maintained, but perhaps most importantly, self-taught. Everything you see here was born of my desire to get something to work, seeing if Koha actually did it, and then modifying it for my local purposes. A little bit about Kresge Library. We've got 432,000 electronic records, but only 18, exactly 18, physical books. 5 of those are serial. Actually, they're all serials, but we only received 5 of them, and they're all annuals. I needed my disaster plan, and it turns out it used to be about 100 pages. I rewrote it in 2 minutes and ended it with, in the case of fire, everybody grab 1 book. P.S. There will not be enough books for everyone. When fully staffed, we are about 20 non-librarians and 11 paraprofessional staff. Technical services, once 7 people with 120 hours of temps, is now 3 full-time people, and I'll guarantee that if somebody leaves, they won't be replaced. We are the 3 people actually that only do anything in Koha. That's why I'm able to run everything without HTTPS online server. We maintain a budget of $1.1 million across 6 different primary accounts, and we've been tracking them in Koha ever since. We were an innovative library for 22 years, maintaining 20 years worth of finances within Innovat and then Millennium acquisitions. A little bit about our history. We've been on Koha since 2016, and I do have 2 servers. They started off differently, but have melded together rather nicely. Production's running 1711 on Ubuntu, and development is running 1805, and because I'm not having any problems with 1805, I'll probably migrate to 1805 in production very shortly. Acquisitions started in development in 2016 and then moved over to production in May 2017 when I had a retirement. My Millennium Acquisitions data ends with June 30th, 2014. We went in retroactively, and my new hire started entering acquisitions data into Koha starting with July 1st, 2014. So we actually have 4 full years of financial data, and we are now on our 5th. You need to do things in a certain order to work within finances and acquisitions. I recommend you do them in this order. You configure a currency, define your system preferences, create any desired statistical categories, define a budget, and then finally create funds and allocate them. Note that the acquisitions authorizations in system permissions are not usually enough for the first steps. You also need to have access to some of the administration ones, although for some of these first points, you'll only really need them for the first year. And after that, as you roll things over, they just simply do not change. Currencies. You can do this in one of two ways. The first is using the web installer. You have all of those optional checkboxes. If you check the one for acquisitions, you're actually given a number of default currencies. The US dollar is selected as the active currency. I actually don't like the word active. Primary would be better here because there can only be one active currency and all of the other currencies in your system are pegged to it. If you do not select that in web acquisitions, it's simply a matter of going to home, administration, currencies and exchange rates, and then finally currencies. You can of course define things as you want, but notice exchange rates do not automatically update. You have to manually update them, and even worse, there is no history. Once you've updated something, there is no record of it. There are two things listed in the bugs that would hopefully improve both of these, but both of them are rather outstanding in their nature. With regard to system preferences, this is what we have set up on our system. For us, the most important settings here are the ability to detect a duplicate invoice, which mirrored the functionality of our Millennium system, and the ability to view all baskets under a vendor. Also, a worthy note is that we don't like to create items, not that we actually create items, but we don't want to create them at acquisitions. We would actually create them at the point of cataloging. We don't pay taxes, and since I'm not doing any electronic ordering, we don't even use the marked fields to order, but in the event that I actually get around to implementing a DDA, I'd consider doing something at that point in time. With 6 straight budget cuts, I don't think that'll be happening anytime soon. Statistical categories are very important here, and you want to have those defined before you do anything with your budgets or your funds. Home administration authorized values will help you to take care of that, and we created 2 specific ones for this purpose. One that allows us to keep track of where money is going to and coming from, because when we submit our budget request, we actually have to keep track of what money is going to other university departments and what is going to external vendors. We also keep track of when things clear so that I can create detailed financial reports from that. And these are the 2 categories that we actually use across all of our funds. It'd be nice if there were more than 2 funds. We were used to, or 2 options here. We were used to 4 in the land of innovative, but I've managed to make do with this across the number of years I've got to date. Next, you need to create a budget. Home administration, budgets administration. Notice that you must actually create a budget before adding any funds to that budget, and also note that the ability to pay and use your budget is not really dependent on start and end dates. I call those nice pretty dates that administrators like to see in the event that you try to say that you're trying to pay something you really shouldn't be. But perhaps the biggest note here is that your budget must actually be active in order for you to be able to place any funds within it or order from it. You also include at this point in time a total dollar amount for your budget. And that factors into the next set of discussions, which talks about creating funds and their hierarchies and allocating them. There are a lot of checks and balances here, and if you violate any of them, the system will not let you continue on. You want to be very careful with your naming here, including, if possible, the name of a specific library or the name of a specific budget. These things will display in a number of different places, and if you simply call them books, and you call it books across several different funds, you're not really going to have any idea whether you're actually using the correct fund code or not, because books could mean any one of 5 different things. The ability to be very careful here with your naming of funds also holds true with your budgets, because there are selected smaller instances where your budget name also appears, and you want to make sure that you are doing things properly there as well. You also do set your statistical categories here, and you must allocate your funds, because you cannot actually create orders for funds until you've allocated for them. Be careful with your allocations, because if the math does not add up, you can't continue. You can allocate less than any amount, but you cannot allocate over. And the system does the math for parent and child funds for you. If you attempt to allocate child funds more than the parent total amount, the system will stop you with the display. If you attempt to allocate more across all of your parent funds than your total budget, the system will also stop you with the exact same dialog box. In innovative land, appropriations meant nothing to us. We could spend, and not have to worry about anything, really keeping only track of our total expenditures, not any of our free or cash balances. So this was a little bit of a change for us, and so we are much more careful about how we do this now, and we do actually maintain appropriation amounts fiscal year to fiscal year. With all of the configuration done, what does this look like? There's actually two financial views, one in acquisitions, one within administration. This is the acquisitions view, and it's worth noting that you can only read across lines here. You cannot explore child-parent relationships here within the acquisitions view, and because of that, and because of the way the system works, the very bottom, the total, might not actually make any sense. So what we've done by default is simply turned it off with this option as noted in the user manual. The budget view, however, is much more detailed, much more in place. Here, the base level allocated represents the amount you've inserted into the fund. Base level ordered and base level spent do not consider amounts of the children, and we'll talk more about this in a later slide. So you've got funds, you've got budgets. How do you spend? You need to create vendors, then you need to create baskets, then you need to create orders. Finally, invoices are created when orders are received. You can't create baskets without vendors. You can't create orders without baskets. And it's actually a very nice streamlined process here. From home acquisitions, click on the new vendor button and note that the name is the only required field. If you're using things for ordering, then by all means fill in some of these other fields. If you use your vendor records a lot, do fill these fields in. We're only keeping track of finances. We're not contacting anybody. We're not sending orders out. The only thing we need is name. Once you've created a vendor, you immediately have the opportunity to add a basket to that vendor in a very nice and streamlined approach, which was much appreciated. Once you click on New Basket, note that much like with vendor, basket name is the only required field. By default, baskets will hold firm orders. There is a very big distinction in the system between firm orders and standing orders, and a basket cannot contain both. Adding a basket here, we filled in the name. The option to select standing versus firm orders is at the bottom of the window, and by default there are firms. There was a new option introduced in 1711 that allows you to override the system setting about add create item. This is actually something that can be set per basket. So for those people that always didn't like that, 1711 solves that particular problem. For us, of course, it didn't make any difference. There's that orders are standing box. For us, this is almost every single basket we create because we don't really do much firm ordering, with 99.9% of my $1.1 million budget spent on databases and resources. Once you've gotten the basket created, you'll immediately have the option to create an order. Again, a very nice streamlined approach. This shows actually some of our best practices for naming baskets. We've got a data basket creation. I've added a library, although for me this isn't really necessary, and then I actually indicate in the basket name that it's actually holding firm orders. This is really helpful for me on the rare opportunity that I hold them, because when you go to vendors and you look at all of your baskets, if they are firm baskets, it's actually a very quick way of being able to determine if something really is outstanding with any particular order. Adding to a basket, again, just a very nice simple click away, and you've got a lot of different options here. From a suggestion, you can hand key a record. You can bring records in through Z3950. You can bring them in from a staged file. We're only doing acquisitions. All we do is hand key a record, and all we insert into it is the title. This is what creating an order actually looks like once you've created all of your records. All roads lead to Rome. All roads lead to Kansas, sharks or not, or all roads lead to a beer hall, because whether you've done one way or another, this is where you will end up. Note here that quantity and fund are the required fields. If you are interested in encumbering funds, you enter amount into the vendor price, with replacement cost, budgeted cost in total automatically pre-populated if you enter a quantity and a fund. Highly recommended, do not ever select uncertain price. If you try to select uncertain price with a firm order basket, you won't be able to close that basket. And if you can't close the basket, you can't receive your orders. But honestly, all encumbered or all order prices are uncertain as far as I'm concerned. I'm not even really quite sure why this is an option, but somebody apparently somewhere thought it was important and wanted it or needed it for some level of reporting, so there it is. I highly recommend not ever using it because it will create nothing but problems, especially in the realm of the firm order. So now we've got a complete order. We've got a vendor, we've got a basket, we've got an order, and there is our order. This is actually a screenshot from the Z3950 record, which includes fields like the title, edition, ISBN, and I think publication information might come in here as well. Again, it's nothing we see because all we do is enter a title and a hand key record. So you add a few more orders, and then you've got a complete basket. If it's a firm order basket, close that basket or you will not be able to do anything else. I haven't talked about standing orders yet. If your standing order basket, if your basket is a standing orders basket, you cannot close it. You actually can only delete it. You don't want standing order baskets to be closed because as you receive them, you just keep on creating new, what I call child orders from whatever you identify as that master standing order record. So you've ordered things. Boxes come. They've got invoices. In order to be able to process invoices, you need to receive. As you receive shipments, you can pay the invoices associated with them. Shipments are received and invoices paid within a single vendor, but across all possible baskets. You might have 20 different baskets represented within this box of books you've just gotten. That doesn't matter. Koha will actually list the basket information, and if it's an available order that's available for receipt, it will be listed. Notice that once you complete an invoice, you can actually go in and correct it. You can actually delete the receipt and unpay it as well, which is very important in case you happen to make a mistake. How do we pay an invoice? From acquisitions, you search for your vendor and you click on Receive Shipment for that vendor. You enter basic invoice information, receive item and enter payment, and then lather, rinse, repeat for all of the various items within that shipment. And then you finally itemize or close the invoice. Search for a vendor, very simple, just start typing characters. This is literally a character by character search. It is not left to justified. So if you just start typing AZ, Amazon will come up. It's actually very nice like that. I really appreciate that functionality because if you've got a lot of vendors, you're not going to remember what you call them all. And the ability to search character by character is actually very nice. Click on Receive Shipment and then enter that invoice information. Note that you will have additional filtering options available on the left panel. Once you see and click on Receive Shipment, you'll see a listing of invoices that have already been paid by that vendor. This is actually a screenshot from our production server. And note also the ability to search for existing invoices by invoice number. This is great because this gives you the ability to see if you've already paid an invoice. But if you do have invoice duplicate checking on, the system would actually stop you. Much like searching for vendors, this is actually a character by character search. Note that only invoice number is required on this first screen, and we actually use shipment date as a way of tracking the actual date an invoice was paid. Some libraries might actually keep track of actual receipt dates and act in kind. We don't, but we use the shipment to actually determine when our real fiscal year beginning and end dates are, which is something that's important for us within our innovative server because the real dates did not line up with the very nice July 1st through June 30th. So you start to receive items. You simply click on Receive for the appropriate item. Note that if you've got a lot of orders, you've got a nice little search box, a series of search boxes at the top. These search boxes allow you to do character by character limiting. So I don't have to worry about this, but if you've got hundreds, thousands of things on order, just start typing in any one of those boxes and watch the results automatically get filtered. And then you have the ability to click on Receive for the item of information. Note that the criteria you enter here actually remain filled in when going between receipts. That caught me completely off guard, and I nearly panicked when I saw it because I wish it automatically cleared, but it doesn't. So do remember, if you do set those filters, to get rid of them, because if you use them in another basket, odds are pretty good you're not going to see anything, and you'll wonder where all my orders went. That's a very good first place to look. I call this my waltz slide. Musicians, anybody have any idea why? Nobody? I'm 3/4 of the way through. Confirm your catalog details once you've entered or clicked on receive. Note you can't actually edit the catalog details here, you can only confirm them. Confirm your fiscal year and confirm your fund. This is why complete detail in your naming is important, because you only see the names, you do not see the coded values. Also set your quantity, which defaults to the number outstanding, and enter the actual cost. The actual cost here is not the total, but actually the actual cost per piece. It is possible to have partial receipts. So if you've got 50 copies of something and only 47 arrive, very simple, just go ahead and change your quantity. So you keep on repeating. You receive, you check your funds, you check your quantities, you enter your actual cost. After you've entered all of these, you will go ahead and click on Finish Receiving. That little box at the very bottom. And finally, you finalize and close that invoice, entering the invoice date into the billing date field. Confirm your invoice total, including any tax and shipping. And once you've confirmed everything is as it should be, select Close to finalize that invoice and save it. Coming from Millennium, I don't like this because I am not prompted to enter an invoice total myself. In Innovative, that was a big thing. Innovative's map had to enter or equal what you entered, or you could not close an invoice. It's worth noting also that invoice total is not part of the Act Invoices SQL table. I find that rather surprising. I was very surprised about that. Because there is no invoice total, guess what? You can't query invoice totals. Ooh, wasn't a fan. Ways around it, yes, but still. Coming from land of acquisitions to what Sandra from Monterey in California called the caboose of Koha was a little bit of a change for us. After you save, the invoice has been modified box will appear in the top of the screen, and you can use the breadcrumb trail to go receive your next invoice or simply enter a vendor. There's the checkbox for close. This was all for firm orders. What about standing orders? The invoice payment process is actually identical, but when you receive an order, the standing order generates what I call a child order with the details of the parent. You can see these relationships only in one place as far as I can tell outside of the SQL tables, and that's through the invoice receipt summary. Otherwise, you really don't have any idea that something is a child or a parent. The parent actually remains active as a standing order, and it will wait until the next receipt, which for us is usually annual. For us, we set up our standing orders as what we call master records. We don't actually have any pricing information within them. We set up the fund, we set up an e-price of 0 because for our databases, we don't actually encumber anything. When we receive it, we go in and make our corrections. What happens to funds and budgets? After you process an invoice, ordered for funds decreases by the value of vendor price times quantity received, your unencumbering funds, and like any proper encumbrance system, the net effect against encumbered funds for a completed firm order is 0, regardless of price paid. The spend for any given fund increases by the actual cost times quantity received. Any basket with all items received will no longer be listed since it has no more pending orders. Note that if you have partial receipts, item biblial and the item expected counts are actually dynamically updated and reflect pending counts only. You can actually go into a basket and see more details. And if you do go into that basket, anything that's been received in very small letters, but in the very upper left corner of the box will actually tell you receipt. That's your indication, which actually took me a minute or two to find, that you've got a receipt and that you're no longer expecting anything from that. All of the prices here you see represent your estimated pricing that you entered at the point of order creation. Again, we're not a fan of that. We would like to see what we actually paid for something. We could care less about estimated prices once something has actually arrived. We maintain that in a separate way with our standing orders. On the acquisition side, your funds look like this. Just like before, you can only read across a line, and your child-parent relationships are not displayed here. It's very simple math. Amount minus ordered minus spent equals total available. And ordered and spent for any funds are actually links that you can click on and will take you to all of the processed and paid orders for that fund. That's very nice. We like that a lot. On the budget side, you do see that parent-child relationship. All of the base level orders for a parent and its children will equal total order. In this case, they're all zeros, so that doesn't really mean anything. But you can see that better with base level spent. Base level spent for the parent plus all of the children will equal total spent. We actually use our parents as placeholders. We do not allow people to use the parent funds for actual placement of orders. And I control that by a combination of ownership and library, and make sure my staff do not have the ability to use the parent funds. I keep them all available for myself, but I don't actually create orders. So it all works out well for me. We didn't have this in innovative land, and every once in a while, one of my staff would actually enter a parent fund and become a very big mess to try to clean up. So ownership and library really gives you a lot of power in controlling how your staff can view and see your funds. For any row, note that base level allocated minus base level ordered minus base level spent equals base level available. For any row, parent or child, base level allocated minus total ordered minus total spent equals total available. This is a much more detailed view. I like this view a lot better, but guess what? This view is hidden behind administration. So unless you have administration access in your system, you're not going to get this. That's kind of disappointing. For me, it doesn't matter. For my staff, they don't care. They just spend the money. But I like to be able to go in here. Unfortunately, I'm able to see that. There's so much more, but I have 30 minutes. Working with invoice data is you can search and manipulate your invoices in all kinds of interesting ways. I didn't talk about close and open, useful SQL queries, cancellations, how to handle things when people give you money, and how to change appropriation amounts, because these are things that are not really readily apparent. In the interest of time, I'm going to see if maybe there might be one question, but I will note that I will be here not only the rest of today, but I'll be here through Hackfest as well. I'm going to be delighted to share with you what we do with our system and show you our live system and give you a demonstration if you like. Any questions? The slides will be available. Is there a question?
Is that part of the sequence of that, or do you add that later?
I think you do that at the point of, if you go into budgets, you can set owners at that particular point in time, and you can set libraries at that particular point in time. Once you get down to funds, I think that's where you do that for funds as well. But a lot of the things with regard to ownership actually don't even apply unless you actually have an owner or a library. It's one of the two. I've got it in my notes here and I didn't talk about it. One of the two has to be set. Without that, anything else you do with regard to fund limiting and fund displaying won't actually matter.